Would you believe me if I told you that becoming a millionaire is far easier than it appears if only you first train your mind to think like one? What if I say that most people fail not because they lack opportunity, but because they have not yet developed the inner blueprint required to receive and retain wealth? This is the tragedy of the modern man. He chases riches, hustles for recognition, and searches the world for the shortcut to success, all while neglecting the single most powerful tool he possesses, his mind. You see, the road to becoming a millionaire does not begin with money. It begins with mentality, with the decision to take full responsibility for how you think, how you act, and what you allow into the sacred space of your consciousness. A man may stumble into money. He may win a fortune, inherit a windfall, even strike gold in a lucky venture. But if his mind is not conditioned to handle it, to multiply it, to respect and manage it, that wealth will evaporate like water in the sun. Fortune favors not only the bold, it favors the ready. The man who has built the internal structure, the discipline, and the belief system to sustain greatness before it arrives. This is where your journey must begin. Not with more effort, not with more hustle, but with higher thinking, with the silent, steady development of a mind that already carries the identity of a millionaire, even if the numbers have yet to catch up. Because when the mind believes, the body obeys. When the mind aligns, the behavior follows. And when thought becomes congruent with vision, the result becomes inevitable. The first law of the millionaire mindset is this: you do not wait to have money to think richly. You think richly to become the man who naturally attracts money. This is not wishful thinking. It is a psychological and spiritual truth. You are always becoming what you consistently think about. Your dominant thoughts are a prophecy in motion. They shape your perception, your confidence, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny. So what are you thinking about? Are your thoughts centered on possibility or limitation? Do you dwell on what's missing or on what's possible? Are your daily mental repetitions reinforcing discipline or distraction? The man who becomes wealthy does not entertain poverty in his thoughts. He may have grown up in lack. He may have known hunger. But he refuses to allow scarcity to take root in his belief system. This is the second law. Your environment may have shaped you, but it is your decision whether it defines you. The man who becomes wealthy in thought first must break free from the mental chains of his past. He must look at the story he's inherited, the fears, the excuses, the patterns, and decide. That ends with me. He must take control of the narrative that plays on repeat in his mind and rewrite it with boldness and clarity. The third law of the millionaire mind is discipline. Not occasional bursts of motivation, not spasms of inspiration. Daily discipline. The kind of discipline that is invisible to the outside world but undeniable in its results. A millionaire mind wakes up early, not to prove a point, but to own the day before it owns him. He reads not for entertainment, but for elevation. He plans not because he likes structure, but because he understands that freedom is born from order. You do not fall into wealth. You design your way into it. The world will offer you distractions. It will try to seduce you with noise, trends, and temptations. But the millionaire mind filters all of it through one question. Does this move me closer to who I'm becoming? And if the answer is no, he cuts it off without apology. Because when you're building something of value, you cannot afford to entertain what does not align. This is the discipline of subtraction, of removing what no longer serves the vision. Toxic people, aimless habits, time-wasting conversations. The millionaire mind is not a collector of information. It is a curator of value. It focuses on what matters and eliminates what doesn't, because clarity is not something you find, it's something you create. You create it by saying no. No to overexposure. No to comparison. No to the need for validation. no to shallow ambition, and yes to deep becoming. This is not about impressing others. This is about impressing upon yourself that you are no longer available for mediocrity, that you refuse to participate in your own delay, that you are no longer waiting for conditions to be perfect, because you are committed to becoming perfect in your preparation. That preparation begins with thought, but it continues with execution. The millionaire mindset is not passive. It is not just belief. It is belief in motion. It moves. It decides. It takes action. And it learns through failure. The man who becomes wealthy in mind does not fear failure. He expects it. He welcomes it, because he understands that every stumble sharpens his strategy. Every setback reveals a flaw in his thinking, and every failure brings him one step closer to mastery. This is the fourth law, resilience. The ability to remain faithful to your vision, even when reality doesn't yet reflect it. The power to stand firm when the scoreboard shows 0. The courage to keep building when no one believes, no one claps, and nothing seems to be working. That is the grit required to carry a millionaire mind. Because before the results show up externally, they must be earned internally. How do you earn them? By managing your internal state, by refusing to let your emotions drive your decisions. The man who develops a millionaire mindset does not operate based on feeling. He operates based on standards. He shows up when it's hard. He stays calm when it's chaotic. He finishes when it's tempting to quit. He treats every single hour as an investment, not because he's obsessed with money, but because he understands the value of momentum. This is the fifth law, direction over distraction. Most people live in response. They respond to notifications, to emotions, to other people's urgency. But the man with the millionaire mind creates direction. He doesn't respond, he leads. His day doesn't happen to him. He commands it. And because he has trained his focus, he accomplishes more in a single hour than most do in an entire day. And it's not just about productivity, it's about power, inner power. The power of a man who has mastered his impulses. Who doesn't flinch under pressure? Who doesn't look around for permission, but within for purpose? That power cannot be faked. It cannot be borrowed. It must be built. And so he builds brick by brick, thought by thought, habit by habit. While others complain, he constructs. While others react, he refines. While others scroll, he studies. While others drift, he directs. Until one day, the outer begins to reflect the inner. The results catch up with the belief. The bank account aligns with the identity. And the man who once seemed unreasonable is now undeniable. This is the reward of the millionaire mindset. Not just financial gain, but personal mastery. Because when you train your mind to operate at a higher frequency, everything in your life must elevate to meet it. Your relationships shift. Your language sharpens. Your choices align. Your confidence grows, not because you've reached the top, but because you've learned to think like a man who belongs there. You'll notice that you no longer explain yourself. You don't need to. Your focus speaks louder than your words. Your actions testify to your discipline. Your life becomes a sermon preached not with noise, but with consistency. And those around you begin to feel the difference. They ask, what changed? They ask for your secret. But there is no secret, only a choice. To think differently, to believe deeper, to act daily. To become the man who doesn't need to chase wealth, because wealth now chases him. Not because he's lucky, because he's ready. Because he trained his mind before he tried to earn the money. Because he paid the price in thought before he ever received the reward in form. And now, the form must follow the foundation. It's law. The foundation is invisible to the world, but it is everything. You cannot see a man's thoughts, but they build the architecture of his future. You cannot measure his daily inner conversations, but they determine the strength of every action he will take. And so, the man who intends to be a millionaire must first become a master of what he thinks when no one is watching. He must train his inner dialogue like an athlete trains his body, consistently, ruthlessly, and without excuses. He does not think thoughts of scarcity, because he knows those thoughts repel wealth. He does not allow room for self-pity, because he knows that self-pity is a silent poison. He does not say things like someday, because his life is governed by commitment, not someday dreams. He uses his words with intention, not only outwardly, but within, because he understands that words are seeds and his mind is the soil. Speak doubt, and doubt will grow. Speak strength, and strength will form roots. The man who develops the millionaire mindset repeats certain truths to himself until they become permanent. I do not wait. I initiate. I do not complain. I convert. I do not fear. I face. These are not affirmations spoken once, they are declarations carved into identity through daily repetition and daily action. His mindset is not a costume, it is armor, forged by intention, strengthened by difficulty, and tested in silence. Understand this clearly. The mind does not grow by comfort, it grows by fire. The man who becomes wealthy must willingly walk through the fire of inconvenience. He must put himself in environments that stretch him. He must pursue conversations that challenge him. He must deliberately destroy every lie he's inherited about what is possible. Because you cannot become wealthy thinking like the man who has settled. So he builds new beliefs, and more importantly, he builds behavior to match. Because belief without behavior is a fantasy. He writes, he plans, he creates systems, not just to get things done, but to track and govern his progress like a business. The man building wealth does not leave things to chance. He builds accountability into his calendar. He is not driven by mood, because mood is inconsistent. He is driven by metrics, by movement, by execution. He doesn't wait to feel like it. He doesn't wait for external motivation. He is self-generated, because he understands one truth. If you cannot control yourself, you will never control outcomes. And control is the root of wealth. Not control over people, but over priorities, over choices, over responses. He no longer seeks permission from the world. He has decided that his life is his alone to shape, and in that decision he has taken the steering wheel. Now he doesn't ask, what will the market allow? He asks, what must I become to dominate? He doesn't wonder if he's capable. He acts until the evidence proves he is. He doesn't sit on the sidelines of his own life hoping for opportunity to knock. He builds the house where opportunity comes to live. This mentality separates him from the masses. He becomes increasingly rare, not because he is better, but because he is more intentional. He is not carried by the tide of circumstance. He creates tides. He is not reactive. He is predictive. He studies patterns in himself and others, and he adapts before necessity forces him to. And as his mindset compounds, so does his clarity. He no longer needs to chase shiny ideas because he's learned the value of depth. He sticks with what works. He goes further with fewer things. He simplifies, knowing that complexity kills execution. And through that simplification, he finds power, not in doing more, but in doing what matters most longer than anyone else is willing to. This is how wealth is built, not by hype, not by luck, but by daily refinement, by building a mind so steady, so focused, so aligned, that success becomes a natural byproduct. It begins to flow not because of one big moment, but because of the hundreds of invisible decisions that stack beneath the surface for months, maybe years, without applause. The man who becomes a millionaire in his mind does not fear those silent seasons. He treasures them. He understands that the harvest does not come before the soil has been cultivated, the seed planted, the roots formed. He knows that delay is not denial, it is a test. A test to see if he really believes what he says he does. If he will stay the course when the rewards have not yet arrived. And so he stays. He sharpens. He builds. And while others look for an exit, he looks for improvement. That is the sixth law of the millionaire mind. Endurance, the ability to withstand not only external resistance, but internal doubt. To keep moving even when progress feels invisible. To persist not because it's easy, but because quitting is no longer an option. This man eventually becomes dangerous. Not to others, but to limitations. Because he has outgrown excuses. He has lost his appetite for distractions. He doesn't fit into old circles, not because he looks down on them, but because he's looking ahead. He's not playing for the weekend anymore, he's playing for legacy. That shift is profound. It changes how he walks, how he thinks, how he moves through the world. He no longer needs external accountability because he is internally driven. He doesn't wait for someone to hold him to his word. He holds himself. He doesn't lower his standards to be relatable. He raises them to be exceptional. And the world begins to notice not because he's loud, but because he's consistent. The man with the millionaire mindset understands that excellence doesn't need to announce itself. It speaks through presence, through precision, through posture. He enters a room, and people can feel the weight of his discipline. That is the product of living at a higher frequency for long enough that the body, the mind, and the world have adjusted to his new level. It becomes normal. The behavior that once felt extreme now feels expected. Waking up early, eating clean, thinking critically, investing wisely, removing toxic people, building systems, protecting time, saying no again, saying no a third time, because what he is building requires space. He knows that his future cannot coexist with everything from his past, and he is willing to make the hard cuts, because this is not about being liked, it's about being aligned. Aligned with the vision, aligned with values, aligned with wealth. That's why he does the work even when the money is not visible, because he's not performing for others. He's becoming the kind of man who attracts what others chase. And the difference between chasing and attracting is identity. Chasers act like the man. Attractors are the man. And that shift from doing to being is what changes everything. And so, the man with the millionaire mindset no longer needs to chase. He becomes a lighthouse. Solid, grounded, constant. And the ship's opportunity, money, partnerships begin to find him, not by accident, but by design, because his life is no longer random. It is the result of principle, precision, and unrelenting personal growth. He wakes up one day and he is living the life that others dream of, not because of a hack, not because of a viral moment, but because he made a decision long ago to develop the mindset before the money, to live at the level of wealth before the evidence arrived. And the world had no choice but to follow. By the time the money comes, the man who built his mind first is no longer surprised. He's not overwhelmed. He's not rushed to spend, not tempted to flaunt, not anxious to prove, because by the time the external wealth arrives, he's already owned it internally for a long time. He does not react to the number in his account. He maintains the same standard that created it. That is how you know a man is truly wealthy. His identity was forged in silence, not just after the income came in, but before it ever had a reason to. You see, to think like a millionaire before becoming one is the greatest act of self-respect you can practice. It means you do not need proof before you believe. It means you do not need validation before you take responsibility. It means you do not wait to be seen before you start showing up as the man you know you are. You no longer need to convince the world of your greatness. You only need to align your thoughts, your habits, and your decisions to reflect it. And that reflection becomes obvious. It shows in your priorities, in how you speak, in what you refuse, in what you no longer tolerate. It shows in your relationships because you no longer associate with chaos. You no longer bond over struggle. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You've chosen a life of focus, and that means the people who remain in your world must either elevate or exit. This level of thinking attracts wealth not because it's magic, but because it is rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. You are no longer one of many. You become one of one. A man who operates on a standard so uncommon that opportunities naturally rise to meet you, not because you chased them, but because you made yourself ready to receive. The preparation was in your silence, in the hours you spent developing thought patterns that aligned with power, in the days you repeated disciplines when no one was looking, in the mornings you woke up early not because you were told to, but because you understood that the world belongs to the men who command the morning. In the sacrifices you made without announcement, in the books you read without anyone clapping, in the character you built while the world was sleeping, that's where the wealth began. Not in your first big win, but in your first decision to walk like the man who wins. Because by then you had already decided who you were, and the world simply adjusted to your certainty. So now, when the money comes, it comes into order, not chaos. It multiplies because your mind is trained to invest. It flows because your habits are systems, not emotion. It lasts because your identity does not require flash. And it grows because your vision is not a destination, it is a direction. You are not aiming for a finish line. You are building a foundation so strong that wealth is no longer the goal. It becomes a consequence of the man you've become. That is the final law of the millionaire mind. To realize that true wealth is not the money, it's the person. Money can be lost. It can be stolen. It can be inflated away. But the man who has built the thinking that created it once can create it again. Because the systems, the clarity, the character, and the mental wiring required to produce millions are not housed in a spreadsheet. They are built into the man. That is why you focus on becoming him. You invest in your mind like it's your greatest asset, because it is. You guard your attention like it's your greatest currency, because it is. You design your environment like it's your future headquarters, because it is. And you execute every single day like the entire vision depends on who you are willing to become, because it does. At this level, you don't waste time. You don't entertain small talk that breaks your rhythm. You don't argue with people who don't live by principle. You don't explain your standards. They are evident in your posture. You are no longer available for inconsistency. You are no longer available for cheap influence. You are no longer available for mental laziness. Your mind is now wired to see opportunity in every hour, not because you're obsessed, but because you are aligned. You no longer need hype to start your day. You've built so much structure that momentum is automatic. You've trained your inner world to support your outer results. You've set up rules that remove emotion from your behavior. And because of that, you now act like the man you respect, even on the days when the world gives you no reward for it. That is wealth. That is the energy that money cannot resist. Not desperation, not performance. Certainty, unbreakable, unshakable, earned through disciplined certainty. You no longer walk into rooms and hope to be seen. You walk in already carrying your conviction. And conviction is louder than any performance. It is louder than noise, louder than flexing, louder than marketing. Conviction is what makes people trust you. Conviction is what attracts the deal. Conviction is what seals the partnership. And conviction is not built overnight. It is built every morning you show up. Every evening you audit. Every moment you say no to what the old you would have accepted. Every time you close the loop instead of letting your mind wander. Every single decision you make that aligns with the identity of the man who owns his future. You've realized by now, it was never about more money. It was about becoming the kind of man who attracts money, and now you see it everywhere. Not because it's new, but because you are. Your eyes are sharper, your thoughts are cleaner, your actions are more precise. You no longer waste effort. You no longer need to be reminded. You no longer seek stimulation. You are self-fueled, self-powered, self-accountable. You are no longer reacting, you are engineering. And that is when the world begins to move in your favor. The world bows to the man who refuses to bow to distraction. You've trained your thinking to reject what weakens you. You've practiced saying no so often that your boundaries are automatic. You've made silence your weapon, discipline your language, and focus your home. And from that position, there is no limit. You scale not because of pressure, but because of principle. You build not because of fear, but because of purpose. You grow not because of urgency, but because of vision. And you win not because you outworked everyone else, but because you outfocused them. You now understand. It's not how hard you grind, it's how deep you think. It's not how much time you spend, it's how intentionally you design it. It's not how loud you are, it's how aligned you are. And alignment is the true asset, the most valuable one. More than capital, more than strategy, because alignment attracts everything else. Alignment brings clarity. Clarity brings direction. Direction brings momentum. And momentum brings compounding wealth. This is the formula. And you have already stepped into it, not because of luck, but because of decision. So do not stop here. You are no longer a man with ambition. You are a man with a standard. You are no longer dreaming about the life. You are living like the man who already has it. And in time, everything else will catch up, just as it always has. Because the mind leads, always. The world follows, always. So remain steady, remain sharp, remain loyal to the code you've built. Speak less, execute more, think bigger. And remember, you were a millionaire long before the world could see it, because you decided every single day to think, act, and live like one before the evidence ever showed up. That is power. That is alignment. That is how the mind becomes your fortune. And once you own the mind, everything else must follow.